So tonight I want to talk about how to get the best out of your consultancy. So before we start, what this talk is about, and most importantly, what it is not about. So it's not a sales pitch. I'm Jean-Marie Ferdeg. I'm the managing director from Open Credo, which is a consultancy. But before that, I've been in different companies of all size, small companies, large companies, and on both sides of IT, so on the buy and the sell side of IT. Before we go into how you can make the best out of a consultancy, you've got different routes when you start a new initiative. You've got different routes to deliver your new initiative. So either you will use your internal team, or you will use a consultancy or development partner. And as much as we understand what the internal team is, you don't always understand what the difference is between a consultancy and a development partner. Because if you think about it, a consultancy which is in technology, they've got skills which are fairly similar to a development partner. They know Java or Ruby or any programming language. They know testing, delivery, infrastructure, so the skills are the same. It's not a matter of hierarchy between the consultancy and the development partner. Both employ really talented individuals. So what makes them different? It's not what they do either. If you think about it, both augment teams. I think they augment teams for different reasons. The development partner augment teams because that's what you call them for. You want to augment your team. You've got an issue of throughput with your own internal team, and then you will call a development partner to augment the team. Whereas the consultancy does it as a way to achieve something else. Maybe you've got an issue about moving from a monolith architecture to a microservice architecture, and you've worked with the consultancy and agreed that the best way to do that is to transfer some skills to your team, and to transfer these skills, they will sit alongside you, and they will augment your team. But that's a means to an end rather than the end itself. And the same for the working software element. Both companies will deliver working software, but for different reasons. So if you wanted to summarize what the dev partner does versus a consultancy, the dev partner sells skills, where the consultancy sells an ability to solve challenges. And that's the first difference, or the first advisory. When you start engaging a consultancy, it's to think about what you need. Think about why you're into the market for a consultancy. People who are consultants typically have 10 or more years of experience. The profile they've got is that they tend to have been through large companies, they've raised through the ranks, and at some point they've been offered the possibility to become manager. We were talking about it before. And they said, no, actually, I'd like to stay close to technology, I'd like to stay hands-on, and then they go in a consultancy. So I think the first thing is, when you involve a consultancy, don't just buy the skills that the people bring. They come with skills, but also with experience. So the first advice is to think about, actually, do you need a consultancy or do you need a development partner? The second advice is to give context, and that's what Ogilvy nicely put as, give me the freedom of a tight brief. The idea is that, again, going back to the idea of the experience, if you only buy skills, you don't need to give that context. Whereas when you involve a consultancy, they're giving you a lot more than just the skills. They're giving you the experience. But to make use of that experience, they need to know what your problems are. So it's not about giving them a brain dump of what your company has been over the last 15 years that you've been here. It's not about making a 5-day workshop to go through all fact-finding. It's about giving them enough context about the problem you're trying to solve, not the solution that you think is right for the problem, but the problem itself that will tilt the scale towards the experience that they can bring to the table. Another advice is to engage early. We know that from the software lifecycle. If you catch a bug really early, then it's much cheaper, it's less disruptive to your team than if you catch it late. It's exactly the same thing with a consultancy. The earlier you can bring them on, the better and the more chances you give them to make use of that experience rather than just be in a troubleshooting mode where you've already made all the choices which have a large impact and they just need to sort out some Cassandra tuning or something like that. If you bring them early, then they can make use of that experience. They can have the decision that matters made with you. And that's in both interests. Consultants tend to be really expensive, so the more impact you give them, the better for everyone. It's better money spent. And from a scheduling perspective as well, the earlier you engage a team of consultancy, the better we will be able to schedule that team and to have the right team in place. At the same time, the interesting thing is there's a caveat to that, because some consultancies have been known to do what we call land and expand strategies, where they sell someone initially, someone really experienced, he comes in, does some architecture advice, then you come back 10 months later, and suddenly it's not one person, you've got 10 people on your team, and there's developers, there's testers, there's everything. The key there is, the advice is to engage early. It's not to disengage early. You still need to be engaged throughout, and you still need to be in control of your team, to be in control of the whole process, and be in control of the consultancy. The last advice is to do as much as you can of reference checks. It's true in any business dealings that you can get into. I think it's even more true for consultancies. There's a few things that makes it more important for a consultancy than for any other thing. The first thing is that a consultancy trades on knowledge. As a company, a consultancy is only worth the knowledge which is in the company. It's also true from a personal perspective for the consultants. People who tend to go into consultancy are people who want to learn things. So when you work in the consultancy, you'll tend to have probably 5, 7 different clients in a short period of time. So be careful that when you buy services from a consultancy, you want to be sure they want to learn, but they also need to have demonstrated that they did it before. And the reference check will give you that reassurance. Another reason to do reference check is that very often when you engage a consultancy is because you don't have the skills in-house. That's probably one of the main reasons that you call a consultancy in the first place. So again, that's another reason to have the reference check. If you don't do that, then how can you judge whether the person is good or not? You need to talk to the other people who have used this consultancy before. And the last element, which I think is the most interesting, is the risk of tunnel vision effect. Going back to the beginning where we said you want to give them context about your problem, not your solution, it's a really easy pitfall to go and just think about the solution. If you do talk to other people who have used the service of that consultancy, who have faced the same problem than you, then they will give you a story about how they went about solving that problem. They will maybe point you in a direction which is different than the solution you've been thinking about. And more importantly, they will give you this kind of, that was my problem and this is how we solved it. They will give you another perspective. Again, that comes with a caveat that it's really easy for consultancies to have kind of a drive-by strategy where they just come in, they're usually really smart people, they will give you really good advice, probably leave you with a really nice report of all the things you need to do. They're pretty expensive, so you're not going to engage them for the long term. You just implement whatever they've done. After 1 year, call them back. That doesn't really work. You're planning on giving them a call to tell them a bit often, just tell them your solution don't work. Somehow they manage to talk themselves into another gig of telling you why it didn't work, and they'll come back and just give you a few advice, and then you're back for another cycle of just coming in, doing a report, and another 10 months to wait. So the more you can work with a consultancy which is actually engaged throughout and gives not only the advice but also implement them, I think the better it works. So just to summarize the 4 points, the first thing to think about is whether what you really need is a consultancy or whether it's a development partner. The second thing is to give as much context as you can. The third one is to give the relationship an early start as much as possible. And the last one is to do some reference checks and talk to other clients of that consultancy to see what the experience they've had. Thanks a lot.